JB Cycles with an update on June the 29th. So I realized that yesterday we had actually a rather strong geomagnetic storm, reaching the KP index of over 7, and that triggers a bearish, potentially bearish scenario for the S&P and the stock markets. So I'm especially aware of when these geomagnetic storms happen when we are near the top of the 17-week cycle, because these are related. The 17-week cycle is the heliocentric cycle of Venus, Jupiter, conjunctions and oppositions. And these geomagnetic storms, they occur most frequent around or just before these cycle tops for the S&P. So there's a connection between planetary cycles, solar activity, geomagnetism and the stock market. So on Friday we did have a strong geomagnetic storm, and we are a couple of weeks from the top of this cycle. So I did check some data. I checked all the geomagnetic storms the past 20 years reaching the KP level 7 or higher, and I made here an average for the S&P. What happens to the S&P after such a geomagnetic storm? And so this is calendar days, and as you see, the initial reaction is an upswing, a pullback, another upswing, and then we have a deeper downswing. Now unfortunately this average is hiding something, because not always we get a bearish outcome from this. So the average is hiding those really bearish outcomes, because they typically also top around here, but then they continue to the downside after this first pullback. So we have an A, B, C. But sometimes we make a deep low at this point and then we rally. Well, I'll come back to that. Anyway, here I have entered this average projection from the geomagnetic storm, and also I have my 4-week cycle in orange, and I have my cycle composite in gray. That's the composite of the 10-week, 13-week and 17-week cycles. So as you see, to begin with, next week both the geomagnetic scenario and my 4-week cycle are both going up, then both going down around July the 10th, and then they top together with the cycle composite, all of them around July the 20th. And then we have a possible low early August, and if we continue to the downside, we have a possible low around end of August. And how does this fit in here with my 4-week cycle? Well, here I have drawn this scenario, possible bearish scenario. So we are here on Monday, and we are in the very bullish phase of my 4-week cycle next week. So say Friday was just a bear trap, and then we rally next week. Then we have the pullback, just like the 4-week cycle or the 2-week oscillation says. Then we have this final top around July the 20th, and then we have a correction a little bit over a month long correction into a low around, I think, early September is a possible date for a low. So that this means this sideways move we just had in the S&P is possibly 10-week cycle low, and this low, possibly around early September, is also a 10-week cycle low. And we see this one is very bullish right translated, while this possible coming one is possibly very bearish left translated. And here we see what looks like a bigger topping formation, like 1, 2, 3, and down we go. And we have this trend line. Maybe we could struggle with it these coming weeks, maybe a false break and then back testing. And then if this plays out, then the interesting part is, will we go down and test these April lows? So this is highly speculative, because not always, we do not always get a bearish outcome from these geomagnetic storms. And I thought we could have a quick look at some previous examples. We had this one from March, April. So in orange we see what did the S&P do. And as I have said before, the S&P broke down early because the projection from geomagnetic storms suggested a top over here, but we see we couldn't make a higher high. It was a lower high, and then we had the correction, and we see this bottom formation here was also a bit early compared to the projection. So we see sometimes the correction can come a bit early, and here's an example of where the correction came a bit late. That's from around September 2018. So we see the S&P is following the blue scenario until we got to this point where it couldn't break down. It made a double top, and then we had a late breakdown with a continuation down. So we see we can have early tops, late tops, and then we had the strongest geomagnetic storm in 20 years around May the 10th, 11th, and I said that was setting up a possible bearish scenario. So the S&P here did actually make a ABC pullback at this point, and over here at this point I said there's still a bearish scenario possible here, but then we should crash down right away. But I didn't like this ABC pullback because that looked bullish to me. I would rather like to have seen a topping formation with higher highs, where we like 1, 2, and 3. You know, you could say this down move here was what ruined the bearish setup. We should have gone a little bit higher, and the third, and then crash down. So this geomagnetic storm, although the strongest in 20 years, it did not have any bearish effect. So at this point we should have crashed down, but instead we broke up, and now we have gotten now it's such a long time since the storm that it should no longer have any effect. You know, if something bearish happens, it should happen in this period. Now it's too late, but now already we have gotten a new storm. So highly speculative. This is a possible scenario for July and August, and this is possibly also a bull market high. Now I don't think we will crash down immediately this fall. I think there will be a possible, say, double top around New Year, or something like, where there will be some more attempt to continue the bull market after this possible correction. And also I think something very bearish has to happen here around end of July, and it's natural to speculate about more wars, escalation of wars, because we're in the 56-year war cycle, suggesting a lot of wars war happening now in the next coming 10 years. So that's my speculation for today, and perhaps I'll make another video tomorrow. See you!